Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and I'm a little salty. I'm a little salty. You might want to take some baby aspirin, some low dosage aspirin after watching this. This is a response video, but I don't want to say who it's a response video to because I don't want drama. It feels like YouTube dramas and beefs are very like 2018, like it's 2021. It's old stuff, so I'm not trying to start a beef. This is one of the first things somebody who had a much more successful YouTube channel than me. That's like one of the first things they told me, like, don't beef with other YouTubers. It's always bad. So it's not a beef, although I am kind of bothered. And I'm bothered because somebody presented their point of view, and it felt like it was like, I'm teaching you, and you're an idiot if you don't see it this way. So it was about Blade Runner, and if Deckard is a replicant. This is a very old geek nerd argument. I remember when I first kind of was aware of Blade Runner, or, you know, as it was turning into a cult hit, after it was either a baseline hit or a disappointment at the box office. There's still debate over whether that was which one was true. Is that especially in the late 80s, early 90s, and then they did all the different cuts. That was like the common thing you would say when you would talk about Blade Runner. Is Deckard is a replicant, and they were very, very, very excited about that, and they didn't want to hear anything else. And I've seen various. I think the first iteration I ever saw was what it was called, the director's cut. That wasn't a director's cut. Whatever. It was released in theaters in like 91, 92, 93, somewhere around there. That was the one with the unicorn footage and the quote terrible narration that I think is just fine. It establishes the tone. It's supposed to be like an old gumshoe detective set in the future. So you give this, cheese ball, and it sets the tone just fine. It's fine. So I heard some very familiar, oh, his eyes are glowing in that one scene. That's the most common one. The replicants have glowing eyes, and his eyes are glowing in this one scene, so he's a replicant. Although even in I haven't read this book yet. It's like 2 inches thick, Future Noir. Supposedly the lighting was set up for Rachel to have the glowing eyes, and then Harrison Ford just leaned in too far or something, or his head was at the wrong angle and he got the glowing eyes as well. So it's a couple things. First of all, the argument for Deckard being a replicant is really an argument for Auteur Theory. Auteur Theory is, and I was very enamored of Auteur Theory back in the day. It was the idea that the director got the credit, for the whole movie. And it was all up to them, the director. Everything was the director. A movie that was in development for 5 to 10 years, a movie that had 300 people on the set, all the credit went to the director. That was the decider. The problem is that this video brings it up. It's all about, if the director says it, it's true. If the screenwriter says that's not true and they didn't like it, it doesn't matter. If the lead says that's not true and they didn't like it, all it matters is that years later the director said it. But Auteur Theory is destroyed by the fact that Ridley Scott did not get to make his ideas go in the movie. The initial release was decided with what the producers and what the studio want. They didn't want the unicorn footage, which was very conveniently lost. They didn't want the concept that he was a replicant, he was a human. Now, just to reiterate, my theory is that the entire point of Blade Runner is that Deckard, Harrison Ford, is human, and he is a complete piece of shit. He is one of the great pieces of shit in film history. He is awful in basically every way. And as the person pointed out in their video, essentially a rapist. Just as if he wasn't bad enough already. And he's bad if you cut that whole scene off. I mean, he's lazy. He's selfish. He's boring. He doesn't really have any moral spine. At one point, he basically says, they basically say, "Hey, kill the replicants." He's like, "No." They're like, "Okay, yeah." And then he's like, "Oh, I did it because they would give me a hard time if I didn't do it." Okay. Usually, I'm not going to say heroes. Protagonists in movies have more of a spine than that. It would have to be, hey, you do this, or your sister, she's on whatever, release from prison. She's going to go back and she's going to finish her 20-year term. It's like one or two line of dialogue, and then you get why someone's doing something they don't want to do, either ever or anymore. But they don't do that. Deckard is just completely awful in essentially every way. But he's actually human. And then these non-humans, replicants, they want what Deckard throws away. Deckard's life is worthless. He does nothing with it. And these replicants are just fighting for every extra second of life they can get. One of the main bits from Roy Batty's fight with Deckard, which is just, a cat playing with a mouse, essentially, is that Roy keeps harming himself with a nail to get an adrenaline boost to give himself a couple extra minutes of life. If you make Deckard a replicant, it's just a Shaggy Dog story of a replicant chasing other replicants, but one replicant doesn't know he's a replicant. It's a complete waste of time. So one of the things this person keeps going back to is auteur theory, as if it's a universal constant, as if it's proven science, and it's not just a theory. But his own theory is destroyed by the fact that it wasn't. You can be making your movie or comic and unmaking it at the same time. When I did Jawbreakers Lost Souls, my first, major graphic novel, there was a character that people liked in some of the preview pages. So they said, let's see more of her. And I said, well, we're still making it. Well, yeah. So I did a draft where I put, her in more of the story. And then I put a draft where she took over the entire story. And my artist said, I didn't sign up for this. I'm not drawing this draft. So we ended up doing the second draft. And it was really good advice. Now, technically, if anyone's going to be an auteur, it's me. I'm the person with the Indiegogo. I'm the person distributing the money. But that's not how it works. The artist can just say, no, I'm not doing this. And what are you going to do? Like put him in the brig? It's not the military. You're going to fire him and you're going to have two different, you can't do it. Like you have to work together. These are group projects, and some people might work more. Some people might contribute more. Some people might do very little, like, I don't know, Robert De Niro in Brazil, but that's people go to see that movie because, oh, he's in it for 12 minutes, whatever. So the auteur, a lot of these theories go on the idea of auteur theory. Then the other thing goes on the idea of, hey, I'm co-writing from the audience. Hey, me, I'm kind of in on this movie too. So headcanon, fan canon, your own take on things. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I always say that movie Night and Day, I say that's a Mission Impossible movie. Ethan got dosed with something that made him a little wacky for a little while, and they basically, what do they call it? Seconded him to another intelligence unit. They're like, you're a little too crazy for, Impossible Mission Force. We're going to put you on this other one. Hey, I even got another one where like every Jason Statham character is the same person. The transporter is also the guy in The Expendables, Lee Christmas. And it's just, I just say it's this guy with this very eventful life, who's had to change his name a bunch of times. I mean, Jason Statham basically plays every character exactly the same, so he kind of always looks the same. He looked 45 when he was 34, and now he's 54, and he still looks 45. So he's kind of always going to look like he's 45 years old. It's fun, and you can get things to prove that. And then you can find things that disprove that, and you just ignore them, or you go more leaps and bounds. So this person's theory, which I've never seen someone push as hard, is that Deckard is a replicant, and he is an advanced Nexus model meant to be a complete infiltrator, completely indistinguishable from any other person. The problem is, that is a completely different story. That's a fine story. Go write that story. they don't own, replicants or imitation humans. I mean, you got bioroids in Chiro's work. It's a staple of sci-fi, an imitation human. Go write that of someone who's hunting them, and then it turns out he is one of them. But this theory requires more and more work, and the more work you do. So his theory is that Tyrell wanted to create a replicant that was indistinguishable from human. We actually see something like this in Rachel, except for Rachel is so clearly a replicant from like the first second you see her, from the way she stands, the way she walks, especially once she starts talking. Clearly a replicant. Now, is she less of a replicant than the quote earlier models? No, not really. She actually seems kind of backwards. That might be from the direction, that might be from the acting. I would say especially like, what's the dumb one? He's got the really weak chin. I'm blanking on his name. He seems very human, actually, especially, what is her name? Not Pris. The one who was doing the dance with the snake, Zora. She seemed 100% human. You mainly found out that she was a Nexus. So the ones, it almost felt like she was a step backwards. But she was very, very clearly, there was little things you would see in each performance that you would go, okay, yeah, this definitely is. Like when they get really bothered when they don't know things and they get super violent. And the physical abilities. Now, one of the things this person said is, well, Rachel doesn't have any physical abilities like the other ones did. Number one, she seemed very, very expressly by Tyrell as someone designed, maybe not to seem more human, but specifically designed to pass the Voight-Kampff test and not be revealed as a replicant. She was a successful model. I believe it's been like a month or so that it was something like 2 or 3 times as many questions needed to be asked of her to identify her as a replicant. So in any kind of, scientific endeavor, an improvement like that, something that is much harder to detect, that's a fine experiment. And, he's going to experiment. You're going to go in lots of different directions. But then the idea is that he's testing out this one that is an improvement, that is 2 to 3 times more difficult. And then supposedly Deckard is, one would assume, impossible to identify by Voight-Kampff. And he has him sit in his apartment alone and then do dangerous assignments without any enhanced strength. Every single part of Deckard's performance is that of a human, and Harrison Ford has said that he portrayed him as a human. Getting back to what I said about a creator can be both making and unmaking their story at the same time. It's an interesting idea. It's a different story, but it's one of those, what do they call them? Brain worms. Once you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, well, what if I put this in? What if I put this in? And then the audience can interpret it both ways. But the person making this theory, they're like, okay, so Tyrell wants to field a much more advanced version of the replicant than Rachel. But then have him sit in his apartment most of the time and then do dangerous assignments running around the street where he can just get hit by a car and killed. And he doesn't have any enhanced strength or speed or anything like that. So then he's like, well, Bryant has to be in on it because it's his program. But we've already established that Bryant hates replicants. In fact, that's one of the lines, back in the day, he's the type of cop that would have used the N-word. And that's the way he looks at replicants. Then one of the main ones, and I say this and I try to be sensitive about this, is I truly believe there is some level of autism in almost everyone who is into geek stuff, heavily into their life. And part of autism is just you miss things that are basic human cues and interactions. People who promulgate Deckard as replicant are obsessed with Gaff. They're like, Gaff knows the truth. Gaff puts the origami unicorn. That means he knows his memories. Okay, as someone who worked in the military, and I was just thinking about this yesterday. I used to have to square up with people when I worked in factories. Like just blue collar jobs in the 90s. You would have to get into it with people. They were not doing their job, or sometimes they were just giving you an attitude. You'd have to like square up. Hey, you got a problem with me? Obviously, that stuff happens in the military and the police. And so, not to be condescending, but if you're a geek and you haven't really been in these very, combative, like contact sports or the military, you don't get the idea of having a coworker who just fucks with you all the time, every day, until you do something with them. Now, Gaff, as they pointed out, is two things: physically injured in a very physical job and trying to get a promotion. One might assume to some sort of supervisory role that has him not going out in the field so much, hence his physical handicap, which seems to be semi-permanent, would not be as much of a hindrance. So you got Deckard, who, even though he's a complete asshole and luck helps him out a lot, is a pretty darn good Blade Runner. He is good at retiring replicants. So in this world where there are fake humans, imitation humans, I mean, come on, everyone growing up during this time, you would tell your sibling, you're a replicant, right? It would be that version of, you're adopted, So if you want to fuck with someone, just start implying that they're a replicant. You know what I mean? And again, the unicorn footage lost the first time and then used from a different shoot. Also, the whole implanted memories thing is to have believable memories. Oh, there was a spider outside my window. Oh, I had this pet when I was a kid. A unicorn is so obviously a fake memory. Like, it doesn't even fit. It, like, breaks the whole concept. I think the thing that bothered me the most was the idea that Terrell had to share with all of these, relatively low-paying people who hate replicants. Hey, we're going to put a replicant in your unit. Like, what the hell? What the hell? How much convincing would that take? And like, why would they do that? Yeah, you can say they're getting paid, but then Gaff's motivation of fucking with a high-performing peer in a competitive job, he's probably worried about Deckard becoming his boss. So just to reiterate, one of the things before I wrap it up, one of the things that bothers me the most is that while I'm not a huge fan of Blade Runner, I respect it. And I would say I like it the more I watch it, is that people will say they love Blade Runner, and then they will put forward a theory that makes Blade Runner worthless. You want to take something that's a classic of sci-fi and turn it into a Shaggy Dog story. And then it's this ridiculous thing where all of these people are coordinating just to like test out the latest model. I mean, they even say the whole point of the Blade Runner units is that replicants are not allowed on Earth because they don't want them infiltrating society. We're going to have an entire paramilitary police organization based on killing them in the streets. And then you're going to go, hey, for an extra $30,000, I'll let you do the opposite of the entire point of your job just to help me out. By the way, how are Blade Runners going to feel about Terrell? They hate him. They would be obsessed with hating him. So what does he have to give these cops? Like millions of dollars and hope none of them ever snitch so he can do something that is illegal in that planet? Yes, infiltrator units would be very popular, but also it would basically, if that gets out, that's a scandal that destroys the entire, thing. And not even getting into, that Terrell really kind of had this, he loved his, even when Batty comes to him, when Batty is revealing all the different types of, chemical processes and therapies he had tried or investigated to extend his life, Terrell is like, he's like so proud of him. He's like, you did all that. He's proud of himself, but there's, a type of love for a creation. If he would have created, so not only does he have to get all of these low-paying cops who hate replicants, who are essentially bigots against replicants, to work with a replicant and have him outdo them in their job. I mean, did you also have to bribe Bryant's supervisor? Because he's like, hey, that Deckard, he's doing a really good job. We want to get him up at the head office. We can have him training. They're like, oh yeah, he's a replicant. Like what? Like how far? Eventually, you have a conspiracy that has to involve like the entire world, just to basically fuck with the mind of one replicant. It doesn't make any sense. But what kind of bothers me, besides, like I said, I thought the video was very condescending, is you take something good and you essentially destroy it so that you feel like you're very clever. And what's his name? The director almost did that as well. I mean, that destroys it. Now, it's fine to do a director's cut with an alternate take, but honestly, most people don't watch that one. The one they watch is the regular one, and that one's very good. It's a classic. I would say that far from proving auteur theory, Blade Runner absolutely destroys it. So anyway, tell me what you think. Again, I'm not trying to start a 2018 YouTube beef with some other YouTuber. These are just my thoughts. You can agree, you can disagree. As always, I read the comments. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.